Disney's gonna cuck me for this video, so if you want to support the channel, please consider subscribing to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Recently, I watched Soul, and I gotta say, it's pretty good. I also don't remember much about it, and I saw it like 5 hours ago. This is a problem that I've had with almost all of Pixar's recent output. They make technically proficient, well-oiled films that leave me with foggy memories. So, what gives? My name is Booty Bopper, and today, let's talk about the problem with modern Pixar. This is not the type of video I normally make, and that title is in fact clickbait, so I think starting there is a good idea. I wavered a lot on the title, but settled on this rather than a Pixar sucks ass, this movie destroyed my childhood title because, everyone's done that. And I don't think most of the movies during Pixar's modern era are bad, they're just unmemorable. Okay. Sometimes the movies are pretty fucking bad, but most are fine. But fine is a massive fall from great. So what's wrong with these movies? I've identified 3 common qualities to modern Pixar movies. 2 of them have to do with the films themselves, and another with the context of animation post-2010. Number 1, we ain't alone in the game anymore. From 1995 to 2009, Pixar was the only major studio consistently making good 3D animated films. Their only major competitor was DreamWorks Animation Productions, a studio that shifted between 2D, 3D, and stop-motion animation and that had, if we're being kind, a much spottier track record.
One thing's now Lenny, he's got the brains.
The types of films Pixar was going up against was Chicken Little, and that, frankly, ain't a whole lot of competition. The type of extended dominance that Pixar had can't last, and the gates burst open all at once in 2010. In that year, Walt Disney Animation Studios released Tangled, DreamWorks released How to Train Your Dragon, and Illumination Studios released its first feature with Despicable Me. Not only is that 3 major studios that begin matching Pixar in terms of box office success and technical capabilities, but that's 3 major animation studios all doing the exact same style as Pixar. This sudden flood of high-end 3D animation dilutes the pool, and with so many visual similarities, it's hard for Pixar films to stand out as much as they did now that their style has been completely eaten by every large American animation studio. There's also the matter of the corporate demands of feature film production during the 2010s. The rise of mega franchises like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the re-emergence of prestige television, streaming killing mainstream physical media, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, it's all made for an environment where theatrical films are at a disadvantage. Most movies make their money in theaters, and theaters are one of the few remaining sources of entertainment where you have to leave your house in order to participate. Big studios are countering this by making bigger movies with bigger budgets, more advertising, and more merch opportunities. Individual movies can still be good under this system. For example, I think the individual MCU films have improved over time. However, when looked at as a larger ecosystem, the movies of the last decade begin to bleed together. Big budget films are stylistically, narratively, and thematically homogenous. To be clear, Pixar films have always been merchandised, but the quality and originality of those early films make them feel like corporate co-opted films rather than corporate films. These new movies, though, again, they're mostly fine, but they all fit the nice, executive-approved boxes. And to get more into the specifics of the films, I think that transitions us nicely to talking about the films themselves. Number 2, the sequel blues. The way I draw it up, the modern Pixar era begins with Toy Story 3 and runs through today. Including their 2 upcoming films, 8 of Pixar's 16 films in that time span are sequels or franchise films. It's easy to understand why. During that stretch of time, the original films grossed an average of $405 million, while the sequels made an average of $870 million. That low cash flow for original films is skewered by the coronavirus pandemic destroying the theatrical runs of Soul and Onward, while Luca debuted on Disney+. But even then, all of the massive hauls, the billion-dollar films, all of those are sequels. Unlike their golden era where their films were unique and strong enough to do well, their modern original films are relying on strong performing sequels in order to get made. This is not rare in the Hollywood studio system. Many great artists in the Hollywood system have had to balance their careers between passion projects and money-making safe films. While disappointing, this transformation of Pixar into a sequel factory is a fate consuming all Hollywood studios. It's stronger felt here, though, because Pixar, like Studio Ghibli, was something of a movie star itself and could exist outside the typical big-budget factory line. To me, the amount of sequels is sad, but the real problem begins when we start watching the original films. Number 3. We're all just coming of age. Forever. Modern Pixar films are, for the most part, about two things: growing up and family is everything. Most of the original films fall into this category, and so do most of the sequels. From a filmmaking standpoint, the trouble is that these are films buckling under their message. The themes of Monsters, Inc., Up, and WALL-E don't take rocket science to figure out. Pixar holds their hand visibly. However, it takes until the end of those films for their themes to come completely into focus. The themes of these films emerge organically from their stories, while the new stories emerge from their themes. Compare Monsters, Inc. to Onward. In Monsters, we have a lot of small things going on. Mike and Sully both love their jobs at the Scare Factory. Sully is a superstar, while Mike is a forgotten technician. Mr. Waternoose is kind of sketchy, but genial early on. Randall is a piece of shit. Scaring kids for powers, kind of fucked up. These are all potential avenues for conflict, but it isn't until the end that we come away with a clear theme. The theme emerges from the story and the characters, instead of the theme driving the story and the characters. This has many benefits. For one, it opens up more audience interpretation and lets themes be more complex. Monsters, Inc. is about how normal people can be propagandized into doing bad things, and how good people can fight back to better humanize their world and understand and care for those around them. That's at least what I got from it. The film is good enough to where there will be various different understandings of it, and you can even watch the movie, have a good time, and never once think about what it's saying. The modern Pixar films are very, very, very insistent that you understand what's happening. Onward is about letting go and forging your own path. It's coming of age, like every other modern Pixar film. Ian is insecure and misses his dad. We know this because his mom talks about it. He talks about it. His brother talks about it. This random stranger in a McDonald's talks about it.
Your dad was a great guy. So confident. When he came into a room, people noticed.
Who the fuck are you? The ending of Onward is emotional, but in an entirely safe and predictable way. We've been overtly primed this whole time that this is a coming-of-age story with a letting-go flavor. Onward is perfectly fine, but it's unsurprising. The characters grow and change in few dynamic ways because they have to arrive at this ending. It's also just less surprising because Pixar as a whole is circling coming-of-age and family matters plots like vultures. Inside Out, Coco, Luca, The Good Dinosaur, Finding Dory, Monsters University. These movies all hit similar thematic beats with slight variations of color. This isn't to say that other modern Pixar films don't pursue different ideas. The problem is that when they do, they either hedge their bets or have a coming-of-age plot occupy similar space. Incredibles 2 is about masculinity in the face of changing gender norms. That's pretty interesting. Now let's pair it with a coming-of-age story for Violet and a standard superhero bad plot. What a relief. I was beginning to get worried that Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl were going to be complex characters with interesting arcs. Even the couple of cases where recent Pixar films have entirely avoided coming-of-age Family Matters stories, they need some asterisks. Toy Story 4 is about outgrowing your purpose in life and finding new meaning in the face of your own limitations and mortality. That's a complex and thought-provoking theme, and it's also the third Toy Story film in a row to be about that. Pixar has become much too smitten with its messages, and it makes their films less dynamic and less surprising. Thematically, the films are repetitive and inorganic. The variety of different stories told in early Pixar is almost inconceivable for the studio now. Toy Story is about being replaced. Toy Story 2 is about being forgotten. Up is about moving on from death and developing late-in-life meaning. WALL-E is about existing in a destroyed world and how consumerism clouds humanity's awareness of the Earth. There are, of course, films from that era that go hard on the coming-of-age, parents stopping you from chasing your dreams story. Ratatouille is entirely this story. But let's compare it to Incredibles 2 to see how much better it's handled. Incredibles 2 relies on coming of age as a crutch to fall back on when the characters begin to probe at the darker, more confusing corners of its story. As a result, the film has 3 different themes that all get underdeveloped. Ratatouille has 2 different themes by the end, but they beautifully parallel one another. Remy and Linguini both go through coming-of-age arcs, developing maturity and confidence. Anton Ego, the cynical critic and de facto antagonist of the film, rediscovers his youth. Both of these plots wonderfully complement each other and give Ratatouille a more complex understanding of life. It's really, really great, but it's not so great anymore. Now it's just fine. Fine is okay, and the kind of track record Pixar had for its first 9 films is pretty much unsustainable over a longer stretch of time. The brief explosion of greatness remains a gift to this day, and their recent slide into consistently satisfactory is not the darkest of fates. They're leagues better than Illumination. DreamWorks is leaning into Boss Baby for some reason, and Walt Disney Animation Studios is, for my money, entering another big freeze, with their last 4 films being kind of actually really bad. But financial results are all that matter for mainstream films, and these films continue to do well, as do Pixar's, so we are in for the long haul. Is that dour? Yeah. I found myself being more cynical about the fate of feature films in recent years, especially since the start of the pandemic, at least for mainstream films. Between the internet and indie film and television, there's great stuff being made all the time. Art just rarely happens at the $150 million level, but, whatever. I just know I'll be a Toy Story 2 stan for a long, long time. And also, by the way, you might see on the picture screen credits. These are my lovely patrons over at patreon.com. If you would like to join, follow the link in the description below in order to get your name in these credits, as well as receive many other patron benefits that are listed in the link below. So thank you everyone for your support, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.